education sector. And Minister Favour Williams, following on the debate yesterday in Parliament regarding the removal of Section 24 of the Child Protection Act, which deems quote-unquote uncontrollable children the possibility of being incarcerated in a penal facility. We're removing that. She will give us an update, as well as issues related to quote-unquote teacher migration. We're going to start with Minister Williams, and I will hand over to her right now. Minister Williams.
All right. Thank you so much, Minister Morgan. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to members of the media. Thank you, as always, for being here to carry the news. So this morning, I want to start with a press release that went out yesterday that alerted Jamaicans of Jamaica's participation in the program for international student assessment called PISA. As you may know, PISA is a groundbreaking study that examines and compares students' performance in mathematical, reading, scientific literature, and creative thinking. PISA assesses the students' preparedness to tackle the challenges of adult life and participate fully in society based on the knowledge and skills students possess towards the end of their school years. Jamaica embraced the opportunity to participate in PISA in 2022 with a sample of eligible students between 15 years and 3 months and 16 years and 2 months, sitting for the assessments in mathematics, science, reading, and creative thinking. Additionally, principals of selected schools responded to an online questionnaire regarding their schools. The national report is expected by January 2024, and it will provide a wealth of data about Jamaica's educational achievement, allowing for benchmarking on a global scale and informing evidence-based decision-making and positive educational reforms. As you know, Jamaica is compared internationally on a number of different fronts in terms of our financial ratios, debt to GDP, or GDP growth, and so on. We're compared internationally in the sporting world, we're compared internationally in the music world, and in other fields. This is another global comparison, but this time it's in education. Putting out the press release, alerting the nation as to what is happening is part of the requirement to engage Jamaicans in this process. And so I did not want that press release to be missed. Obviously, when we get the report in January 2024, that report will be shared. So now I want to begin reporting to the nation, as I did last year on the issue of teacher turnover. As you know, like any other sector of workers in the economy, it is to be expected that on an annual basis, we will see movements in and out of the education sector. If you look across the financial sector, the medical field, in IT, in any sector in Jamaica, there is a percent of persons who make personal decisions to go into other fields, to migrate, to retire, to go into entrepreneurial endeavors, and so on. And so the teaching sector, the education sector, is no different. Annually, in the teaching sector, we have the added fact that other sectors do not have, that a certain percentage of our teachers go off every year on their earned vacation for either 4 months or 8 months. If you will recall, teachers earn 4 months of vacation after serving for 5 years. Teachers also earn 8 months of vacation after serving for 10 years. Last year, at about the same time, 1,664 teachers went off on either 4 months or 8 months or retired. This represents about 7% of the cadre of teachers, and the cadre of teachers total about 25,000 teachers across the education system. This year, approximately 2,300 teachers are eligible, have earned their 4 months or 8 months leave or retirement, and will be proceeding on their 4 months or 8 months vacation or retirement. The annual cost of paying replacement teachers while teachers are on vacation for 4 months or 8 months is approximately $3.1 billion. In the advertisements that we're seeing in the local newspapers for teachers, many of the ads are for teachers to fill 4 months and 8 months vacations. For example, I took a look at the ads for teachers that have been posted over the past 2 weeks. Some of the ads will indicate if the job is for 4 months or 8 months, or if the job is a clear vacancy, meaning a teacher can be hired permanently in that position. There are a few ads for teachers for 2 months. There are some ads that indicate whether the job is a contract job or a temporary job. There are also some administrative jobs advertised as well. As of yesterday, I'll deal with the ads that were published in the paper. 20% of them indicated clear vacancies. 34 of the positions were for teachers to fill in for 4 months or 8 months vacation, temporary positions or contract positions. And there were 46% of jobs advertised that did not indicate whether the position was temporary or clear vacancy. I note that in some of the social media videos highlighting the vacancies in the education sector, that some of the ads were repeated in the same video, apparently to make the number of ads seem more than they are. Obviously, I can't prevent persons from creating their own news, but at the very least, we would expect persons to be truthful. In terms of our own internal figures, when we look at the period January 2022 to June 2022, and we compare that with the same period January 2023 to June 2023, we're seeing a 43% decline in the number of resignations reported. So in January to June 2022, our internal figures show 506 resignations versus 287. These are the numbers. As I did last year, I will do again this year. I will report to Jamaicans as we get new numbers so we can keep the country abreast with what is happening. Last year, we spoke to a number of different strategies that are available to schools to use. Those strategies proved very successful. We had a very successful year, which we're ending now, and we will employ the same strategies again for the new school year. And if you recall, there were a number of different strategies, maybe over 15 different strategies. We're back again to say that school boards are empowered to take early recruitment decisions, that school boards can engage teachers who are on their approved vacation leave. So if a teacher chooses to come back to work, they obviously will be paid twice, once for their vacation and the second to work in the school system. We also encourage our schools to see how best they could extend service for teachers scheduled to retire. They can engage part-time teachers. They can engage teachers who have retired since January 2018. They can engage pre-trained graduate teachers. They can engage final year student teachers in recognized teacher training programs. Obviously, there would have to be some flexibility to the scheduling. They are enabled, or school boards that is, and or principals to redeploy and train, redeploy underutilized staff. They can merge small classes. They can use the blocked timetable approach. And of course, we are advocating increased use of information communication technology in the classroom. We have a number of recorded lessons as well, 117 at the early childhood level, 514 at the primary level, 598 at the secondary level, and about 9 at the tertiary level, for a total of 1,238 that can be used as well in our classrooms. We're asking our schools to share their resume bank with each other. We're asking for partnership between schools to benefit from shared expertise. When we look at teachers that are available to the ministry through the Youth Scholarship Program for Teachers, there are 88. We have as well another 10 in our Build Out Our Science Teachers program. We will encourage voluntary relocation of teachers in overstaffed schools. We also continue to have teachers from Cuba, and this year it looks like we're looking at about 70 teachers that are there. We have specialized teachers who have completed their program of study. We have current year students, current year fourth year students, and we also have a number of teachers coming out of our teachers' colleges this year, over 1,000 of those teachers across the subject areas. And we're also adding this year, for the first time, a job recruitment platform to which both schools and teachers looking for positions, they can meet each other in the virtual space, meaning you can upload your resume to the job recruitment platform. jobs can be advertised there as well. We think it will make for a more efficient meeting of those in need of jobs and those looking for jobs. Of course, we will continue to communicate with our boards, with our principals on this front as we move forward. You know as well that the government is putting budget support behind increasing our cadre of STEM teachers. Last week, Minister Clark announced 1,250 scholarships over 5 years for teachers to become STEM teachers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We will employ the strategies that I've outlined again for this new school year to help with fill-in for those teachers who are on their 4 months or 8 months vacation, as well as the teachers who have retired, as well as for teachers who may have decided to migrate, meaning leave Jamaica, for teachers who've decided to leave the teaching industry. And so with that, Minister Morgan, I'll turn back over to you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you very much, Minister. Just wanted to reiterate, did you say that there's a 43% reduction year over year in teacher resignations?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Minister. We will take questions. Would you prefer? All right, so we will take questions of Minister Williams before Minister Vaz makes his presentation. Are there any questions? Sure. Angelique?
Hal Shane Burke, Radio Jamaica News. Thank you very much, Minister, for your presentation. Minister, in relation to teachers, I've spoken to principals that there is concern being raised about a possible crisis in relation to English language and technical subjects such as IT and science. What is being done by the administration to ensure that we are not losing a cadre of professionals and experience in these particular areas, and also to beef up what we already have?
Alshain, could you help us by giving us a little bit more specific? You said that there is a crisis.
Looming, that was the word that was used.
Who said that?
Principals. I spoke to
Which
a number of principals I spoke with. And there's a possible, and we also carry the news on our station.
What is the crisis? Like
that they're losing experience
Did they
in
say
these
the amount?
areas. No.
But it's very difficult for us to respond to a...
But
so let me give you an example of why I'm doing this. There's a front page story that said that teacher migration is at crisis levels. And this morning we're hearing that there has been a 43% reduction in teacher resignations. You have asked the question, there's a looming crisis of English teachers, but there's been a 43% reduction in teachers leaving.
Yes, Minister, but we don't have a disaggregation of exactly what subject matters.
How can you make such a statement without the data?
Again, I have been provided the information by the
data?
principals. So
Where's
I'm
the
asking
data?
the question of the minister who has policy direction for the ministry.
And as the Minister of Information, I have to ask the question, what data are we predicating this looming crisis on? Who has given you how many English teachers have left the classroom so you can make the statement that there's a looming crisis? I have to be very careful in how what comes out of postcab is given to the public. And the minister is going to respond. But one of the things I'm trying to do is when we give information to the public as ministers, that it's backed by data and numbers and facts. Anecdotal statements are not facts. That's why I asked the question. Minister?
Okay, so let me give you some data. Our 2023 teacher training graduates by specialization are as follows. Business Studies, 28. Computer Studies, IT, 36. English Literature, Literacy, 60. Industrial Technology, 20. Geography, 17. Social Studies, 31. Human Ecology, 20. Mathematics, 126. Integrated Science, 30. Biology, 9. Chemistry, 8. Physics, 2. Spanish, 3. This is just coming out of our teachers' colleges. Remember that we also have teachers among us from Cuba who help in our Spanish program across our schools, and so on. I haven't given you an exhaustive list of this specialization, but just to give you an indication that we do have coming out of our teachers' colleges teachers who are specialists in a number of different areas. And remember that I just told you about this scholarship program that Minister Clark announced for 1,250 STEM teachers, that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, over 5 years. And I know that he has plans based on the budget from the Student Loan Bureau for other colleges as well. As you know, we have 10 teaching colleges in Jamaica, including UTech and UWI, the programs at those two institutions.
Thanks, Minister Halshin. I think one of the things that we are trying to do as a government is to lead fact first. So every year there is a story in the public that there's a teacher shortage. But every year there are more teacher training graduates than the amount of teachers that are leaving the classroom. And we're running the risk, Minister, of having a lot of teachers unemployed because there's not enough space in the education system to employ them. So I think one of the things that the media needs to start thinking about is not whether or not more teachers are migrating than who are being graduated, but how are we going to find space for a lot of the teachers who are leaving Teachers College, who are having challenges because there's not enough space in the public education system for them. Minister? Thank you. You're welcome. You have another question, Alshin? Sure.
Questions have been raised, or concerns have been raised about the proposed amendment to the Child Care and Protection Act. Civil society groups are saying that deprivation of liberty of young persons seem to be a normal action or the prescription for what is perceived to behavior abnormalities or issues with behavior. Is the government looking at narrowly defining what is behavioral issues and look at other ways of dealing with it rather than custodial?
The issue or the challenge that the amendment to the Child Care and Protection Act is seeking to deal with is in fact those children who are brought before the court by their parent or guardian and they are deemed to be uncontrollable. That's the subset of children. Way before that, the CPFSA intervenes in the lives of thousands of children who do not make it into the court system. So it's that subset of children whose parents bring them before the courts. For whatever reason, they feel they cannot control, the child is out of control, whatever the reasons, they bring their child or children in front of the court. And as you know, and I heard Minister Morgan this morning explaining, the courts do send some of these children into the penal institution, right? The amendment to Section 24 is to give options for the child to be receiving therapy, whether on a non-residential basis, meaning the child and parent or guardian would visit the center, the one at Maxfield Park Children's Home, on whatever the frequency is, whether it's once per week. So the child would come to the center, get the session, go back home. That's the meaning of non-residential. We also are providing for those cases where you have chronic behavioral issues, where the intervention needs to be longer. And based on the reports, it would have been decided that it would not be in the best interest of the child to return home. And we have some of those situations in which our children are going to find themselves. And we have to provide for them in a place where they can get rehabilitation, they can get help, they can understand what it is that has been happening to them in their home, in their community. And sometimes in order for that to be effective, that child will need to be in a different physical setting. That is what we're trying to do.
Thank you very much, Minister. Are there any other questions to the Minister? I suspect not. Minister, thank you for joining us this morning at PostCap. I will now welcome Minister Darrell Vaz, Minister of Science, Energy, Technology, Telecommunications, and Transport. Will be giving us an update on his ministry. Minister Vaz.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, and of course, most importantly, those who are watching on the various platforms. First of all, let me indicate that you would have heard that the Ministry of Transport and Mining was subsumed between the Ministry of Science, Energy, and Telecommunications and the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. So transport came to MZ and mining went to Agriculture and Fisheries. So, as was said, the new ministry is the Ministry of Science, Energy, Telecommunications, and Transport. So an additional T has been added. There is a number of areas that I would want to update PostCap this morning, but obviously the one that would be most topical and of interest would be the transport portfolio. So what I will do is I'll just go through briefly on some of the other areas, specifically telecommunications, which would have been technology before, and of course a large part of that has been transferred to the office of the Prime Minister under Minister Dana Dixon. So let's update you on the telecommunications, specifically the Universal Service Fund, an agency under the ministry, as it relates to the rollout of the Wi-Fi. So I'm pleased to say that all 14 parish capitals have been provided with public Wi-Fi service under this initiative. In addition, some public parks, green spaces, and pedestrian thoroughfares were also furnished with the facility. Notably, the fund has established a total of 19 Connect Jamaica sites. Of course, you would imagine that they would cover all the parishes, so I don't need to read them out. But as I said, including parks and green areas, which will include outside of the townships, would be the Cecil Charlton Park, Chapelton Park, Devon House, Emancipation Park, Junction in St. Elizabeth, Mandela Park, Olympic Way, St. William Grant Park, and the Cecil Charlton Park in Mandeville. So obviously that's free Wi-Fi, obviously very good for the community that have been the beneficiaries. In terms of the Technology Advancement Program, TAP 3, and this comes on the heels of obviously some of the discussions that were held earlier with Minister Williams and the questions. To date, budgetary provision has been made to train 300 participants in a coding training intervention being administered by Amber and Hart NSTA Trust. 200 of these participants have been enrolled and are actively pursuing their coding program at 7 sites across the country, utilizing facilities at UTEC, Montego Bay campuses, Monique Teachers College, Youth Innovation Centers, and Community Access Point facilities. A total cost to date of $9 million has been expended on the program. And of course, this program will continue and expand as we go along. The island-wide broadband program, the USF continues to provide connectivity to our schools and public institutions such as post offices, health centers, and libraries. And so far, we have spent over 165 million Jamaican dollars in doing that. We have refurbished 17 of the CAP facilities through a partnership with the United Nations Development Program and are in the process of implementing 6 new CAPs. The USF continues to fund the National Broadband Initiative in collaboration with the National Works Agency, eGov Jamaica, and the Ministry of Education and Youth. To date, a total of $924 million has been expended. ICT clubs in schools. Fund has established and launched 12 ICT clubs in various schools across the island. And again, that is part of the initiatives being carried out by the Universal Service Fund in obviously getting connectivity and making it accessible. The most interesting one for me as minister, and the most recent one, is that on Friday, June the 23rd, the USF, in partnership with the ministry and also the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, launched a JUMP program with Cable and Wireless Jamaica Limited, and this is aimed at digital literacy and skills training to unconnected Jamaican homes, as well as ICT devices and broadband connectivity at a subsidized cost. So far, the USF has spent $13 million, and there have been 1,700 PATH households that will benefit from enhanced digital literacy and skills and training. I want to expand on that a bit. So this is a program that Cable and Wireless has been doing throughout the Caribbean, through their foundation and other private sector interest. And basically, what we decided to do after I made a trip to Puerto Rico on their invitation to see how it worked, is to get PATH beneficiaries, 40,000 PATH beneficiaries, most of which have no access, they have no literacy in ICT, and most importantly, they have no device. So using the PATH established list, we have done a pilot project of 1,700, which includes giving the household a device, giving them connectivity, and giving them training. So you imagine that these persons would not normally be able to afford it, and therefore obviously those children would be disadvantaged in terms of being able to get the opportunity to be able to become computer literate. So it's something that's near and dear to me as minister, and the 1,700 that has happened is going well, and importantly, the aim is to get 40,000 households. That will have a huge impact. The cost of that is probably about $20 million US. But in the scheme of things, if you think about $20 million US and 40,000 households who would not normally get that opportunity, it is a huge, and it is value for money. So discussions are being held, continued. We've already engaged the Minister of Finance to see how we can do this over a 3 to 5 year period, and so far it is positive. But my aim is not to stop at the 1,700 or for the program to stall at 1,700, to continue even in increments. So that, I think, is a huge, huge announcement, and it shows what public-private partnership is really all about. So again, congratulations to Cable and Wireless, Ministry of Labor and Social Security. We're using their data, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have their data, we have their list, we have everything. You'll recall 189 hotspots, 3 per constituency. 63 constituencies were committed back in 2021. We had some challenges because of obviously the pandemic and supply chain, etc. I'm pleased to announce that all 189 sites are currently online, with 166 of them being formally launched across all of these constituencies. So the formal launch is behind, but the most important thing is that these communities, 189 of them, are connected and online. Huge, huge feat. And again, good work by the Universal Service Fund. We had a 4th community Wi-Fi site, which would be 63 for 63 constituencies. All sites are expected to be launched in the 2nd quarter of this financial year, and the project will cost in excess of 100 million Jamaican dollars. And I've gone further to include one more Wi-Fi site, so Minister Morgan will now have 5 courtesy of the Universal Service Fund. 90% of those sites have been scoped, designed, and the procurement process has commenced. So that would take it to 5 per constituency times 63. I'm going to touch on a not so good news subject matter, but you have to be balanced. And that is the quality of service in relation to the telecom providers. It's a huge issue, and the complaints come in daily. During the period 2023, January to June, the OUR received 130 complaints in relation to ICT quality of service issues. The 2 broad categories of these contacts were interruption service at 96 and poor quality of service 34. For the preceding 3-month period, October to December 2022, 51 contacts were made for interruption. Now we know that many people suffer it in silence and don't go through and make the necessary complaints, either because they don't believe that they will get any redress or for whatever reason. So the complaints are much more, because I get more complaints on my WhatsApp than what the OER received for that period in almost a day or 2. So that is a big issue. And it is therefore expected that before the end of this fiscal year, quality service rules under the Telecommunications Act will be promulgated and operationalized. The rules will place obligation on licensees to measure and report on 21 fixed and mobile parameters, including fault repair rate, drop call rate, mobile network availability rate, broadband internet availability rate, latency, data transmission speed. The rules will also establish targets for each parameter which a licensee are required to comply with. In relation to establishment of outage disaster protocol and measures to improve network resiliency, obviously we are also dealing with a disaster protocol and network resiliency that would be obviously worked through with OGPEM, and that is obviously because we have Hurricane seasonal every year, and of course we always have to plan for any catastrophic event. That will include national roaming during disasters, emergency mobile roaming, disaster plans and business continuity plans, and again, the OUR, who is the independent regulator, obviously is playing a big role in this. Okay, so now I'll move to transport. And obviously, as a new minister on the block, in less than 1 month, I've started off with a bang. So, there has been questions raised about the toll increase and how that comes about. And obviously, on my learning curve, I've been able to decipher and share with you exactly what the process is. By virtue of the Toll Roads Act and Concession Agreement and Toll Road Operator, the toll road operator is entitled to a variation of toll once every 12 months, effective on the anniversary date of the last adjustment. The current implementation date, agreed with both the operators of the PJ Patterson Highway and the Edward Seaga Highway, is the first Saturday in July. The application for variation of toll levels is to be made by the concessionaire or the developer to the toll regulator no later than 2 months prior to the anniversary of the last adjustment. A copy of this application is sent to the Ministry, NROC, and the Toll Authority. Where the toll regulator is satisfied, he makes recommendations to the Minister and the Ministry. Approval is sought from Cabinet to proceed. The Toll Road Act Section 23 alludes to the discretion in approval, while the concession agreement in Clause 22 and Schedule 15 speaks more specifically to this discretion. It, however, speaks to the consequences for increasing it. Implications for failure to approve the application and grant the variation are outlined. Clause 22.3 of the concession and Clause 1.3 of the Schedule 15 states, where the approval is not provided on the relevant date at the levels that the developer requested, the developer can require the grantor, which in this case would be NROC, the government's representative, to pay compensation for lost revenue for the period in which an actual toll levels are below those requested. This may arise either due to delays in implementation, insistence that a lower rate is charged, or where the request is completely refused. Where the decision has been made by Cabinet to proceed with the variation, the Minister, by notice in the daily newspaper, informs the public and/or interest groups of the intent and invites them to make submissions to the Toll Authority concerning the proposed variation. It is customary to provide a notice period for the submission of comments of 5 to 7 days. The Toll Authority summarizes the submission and forwards it to the Minister for consideration. The Ministry subsequently makes a Gazette order for the variation to be implemented. And once the order authorizing the variation has been made, the developer shall, by publication of press advertisements by nationwide newspapers and such radio announcements as the developer considers appropriate, inform the public of the variation. These advertisements are to be published to ensure that the public is provided with due notice before the variation is implemented. So this is the most important part. The toll levels for any period are set by the developer in accordance with the capped toll level for that period. The capped toll level is calculated based on a formula outlined in Clause 5.2 of the tolling policy. In Section 50, the formula is linked to the exchange rate and the US and Jamaica Consumer Index, the CPI. So we have a situation where inflation, as we know, which is ravaging the world, we have not escaped that. However, there are some other facts that need to be known. The increase ranges from between 0 to 16%. Only Class 1 T-tag customers will see no increase. The maximum increase at any one toll is $60 Jamaican, and additional discounts are applied for T-tag users as outlined. So, in essence, what it is encouraging is obviously persons who use the highways frequently to use a tag rather than to pay every time they go through. There are also other incentives, 10% frequent user discounts for Class 1 and 2 T-tag customers, 11 trip onward for the week were posted for Portmore and Spanish Town, omitting Vineyard and Maypen, which have now been included. So the discount now doesn't only deal with 2 toll booths under PJ Paddison, but 4. The 10th trip free per week will now also be extended to all T-tag customers at the toll plazas. The T-tag user discounts for Class 1 and Class 2 customers were not included for any of the plazas. This feature also has been extended to include all toll plazas. And the Class 1 T-tag customer at the toll plazas will see no increase in toll rates. In fact, there has been no increase at all for the Class 1 customers at Portmore, with or without the T-tag. So, that is to say that we have tried to do as best as possible to cushion the increase, and as you would have heard late Friday in last-minute negotiations between NROC, the toll authority, and my intervention as minister, the Jamaica North-South Highway, who are the operators of the Edward Seaga Highway, have agreed to defer any increases until August the 20th, which obviously would be a little under 2 months for an extension. I cannot confirm, but I am still at the table and hoping that there may be the possibility of an extension to that August 20th date. However, that is not confirmed yet, but it is still on the table from the government side to try, but to thank the Jamaica North-South Highway for their kind gesture of agreeing to defer the increase for the Edward Seaga Highway. Now to transport, which we all know has major issues in terms of both the government bus service, the JUTC, and of course the public transport operators, which is governed by the Transport Authority. Let me start again by reiterating the press release that was issued by the ministry yesterday in relation to the 16% reduction in road fatalities across the island for the first 6 months of 2023, reduction from 245 road deaths, and as of July 3rd, 2023, to 208, 16%. But obviously, way too much. Still, one is too many. And of course, you'll recall the Prime Minister's introduction of the implementation of the Safe Systems approach back in September 2021. We are obviously continuing to move apace with that. I had my first meeting with the Road Safety Council, Deputy Chairman Dr. Lucian Jones and his team, along with the ministry team and the Transport Authority last week, and it was very heartening and fruitful in relation to what we have to do. I will move to the Jamaica Urban Transport Company Limited. So we have a daily rollout currently of 164 buses. And of course, these buses are an older fleet and therefore not running at optimum. The required amount of buses is between 350 and 400 buses. So we are woefully behind. And of course, that is causing great inconvenience to the public that uses that mode of transport because of the wait time, which I understand is extensive, can be as much as 2 hours. The new school term is right. Summer has just started, and as you blink, it will be back to school. We have made some plans for rehabilitation with a big spend on spare parts, totaling about a little under $400,000, which was authorized as I came in, to try and get our fleet up to 310 buses for back to school in September. This will include the 50 buses that we have been talking about that were ordered some time ago, the 45 diesel and the 5 electric buses. I can say that before I came here this morning, I got the name of the vessel and tracked it for myself, as I've been hearing about this vessel arriving for about 6 weeks. And I can indicate that the vessel is now entering the Panama Canal. Once it passes through there, it will take about 2 days to get to Jamaica. So I expect it here between Friday and Monday. That 50 buses will go into the fleet, but obviously that is not enough. We have 5 electric buses and 45 diesel. We are moving away as a government policy from fossil in diesel and have moved to CNG, which is compressed natural gas, from LNG, and we have had a pilot project of 5 of those through a framework agreement with New Fortress Energy. And there has been another order for 20 that is now in place, expected to get here by the end of the year. But more importantly, the framework agreement that was approved and signed off from the original test has up to 150 buses. And that number is a magic number because the depot that New Fortress Energy put in place at their cost, obviously because it was they would sell the LNG, can hold up to 150 buses. I mean fuel up to 150 buses per day. So we are now looking at that. The framework agreement for that was very simple. The differential in price between diesel and the LNG at that time was quite a spread. It has reduced because of obviously the issues with the Ukraine war. But still, there is sufficient differential between the two that can go towards paying for the buses. So we are now looking at the possibility of increasing and maximizing that to 150 compressed natural gas buses with a view of converting Portmore into a CNG hub as a depot is there, while we test electric buses. So we have 1 electric bus that's being tested now and 5 that arrive on the weekend. And of course, I saw and responded in the media recently about what do we do about those buses in terms of new technology. So the one that is currently being tested by JUTC has a charging station, and for the 5 that is coming, we will have 3 charging stations for those 5 installed. However, the technology is moving at such a pace that a part of the agreement with the suppliers of the buses is obviously training for the JUTC staff and of course, transfer of knowledge. What is the plan going forward? You would have heard the Minister of Finance announced in his budget presentation that he had made provisions for 100 electric buses for 24-25 and 100 for 25-26. The results of the testing will decide whether or not we go full into electric buses head-on, or we stagger it with CNG and electric, because obviously the technology is emerging, and we have heard stories about those countries that have gone headfirst into electric and are facing major challenges with up to 30% of their fleet down in a matter of months. So whereas we are moving in that direction, we are cautious, and the bottom line is that it may be that we may have to make a representation, depending on the tests, as to whether or not we go full with the 100 or we split it, at least for the first year. However, we all know the procurement processes in Jamaica and how extensive they are. What I am instructed JUTC is to start the procurement process from now, so that by the time the funds are available, either in supplementary, if we are lucky enough, or in the new financial year, based on the crisis that we are in at JUTC, that the procurement exercise would have been completed rather than waiting on the budgetary allocation to start, which would make you lose another year. So in essence, what I'm saying is that if we can complete the procurement between now and the end of the year or first quarter of next year, it means that once the funds have been made available, we can go directly into production, because we have done everything that we need to do to satisfy the procurement requirements. What does that mean? That there's a possibility, depending on how discussions go, and of course pending the Ministry of Finance, that we could get, so we have 25 CNG buses that are committed, 5 that are here tested, and 20 that were ordered a few months ago. We could get another 125 CNG buses between now and the end of the year, and we would be in a position to order another 100 buses by early next year, meaning the new financial year, or before, if we can make funds available through the supplementary. So that would put you at 225 new buses within the next 6 to 18 months, depending on, obviously, funding availability. So the 310 that will be rolled out in September, although it's a big increase, they are older buses, they have passed their useful life, and therefore it is not something that we can say with confidence that will remain and go in an upward trajectory instead of a downward from 310 back down to 100 and odd. So this is an area that I am paying specific attention, because I understand the challenges. Just to touch on JUTC, we are doing a pilot project for a cashless fare collection system, which should start and take about 6 months. The use of cash for JUTC is definitively not a prudent way, because the fact of the matter is that you only collect a small percentage of what is passing through, and that's a reality. Not to mention what happens with everything else, the oil, everything else that happens. So we are doing a pilferage fuel management using technology, as all other companies around the world that run big fleets are using. And of course, the cashless pilot is on, and I think that is going to be a big, big help in relation to the viability of the JUTC, which, as we know, it takes billions of dollars out of the budget every year for subsidy. Let me close on two quick matters, and that is the vision for public transport in Jamaica. Public transport is regarded by the population as a key enabler of national prosperity and development, characterized by efficiency, convenience, safety and security, reliability, affordability, and pleasant. So if you look at the vision that I have as to what obtains now, it's almost opposite of what I'm saying that is happening now. Public transport becomes the preferred choice for safe movement, both for work and leisure commute, contributing to improved commuter confidence, assured public safety, positive impact on the natural environment through the reduction of pollution, markedly reduced traffic congestion, and increasingly dependable in supporting the expansion of commercial activities right across Jamaica. A system that enables citizens from all levels of society to share in the experience of consistently high-quality public transport service, and a public transport sector operated by individuals who appreciate the social, political, and economic value of delivering a safe, dependable, efficient, and decent transport system to the country's development and well-being of our citizens. Part of that vision is a rural school bus transportation that, as a rural MP, is critical and one of my biggest priorities, and I know that my colleagues on both sides who represent rural constituencies would agree. You're talking about kids that are leaving their homes from at 2 o'clock in the morning to walk for miles to get to the nearest point of where they can get public transport. Then they have to now go through the public transport being disrespected and abused or left because their fare is much less than adults, and then having to mingle with adults in the taxis, which we know what can come out of that. So they then leave school in the afternoon at 2, 3 o'clock after their activities, or 4 o'clock after their after-school activities, and don't get home until 10 o'clock at night. So what kind of learning environment is that for these youngsters, some of who have the most amazing potential and are only doing that because of circumstances of their parents? So I will close with that because I have a draft TOR that I have already established. Implementation of a safe, secure, efficient transport system for rural students. That is a major driver of behavior change among students. It can operate in two ways: publicly owned buses as well as franchise services to provide the services. All drivers and conductors thoroughly vetted, trained in youthfully friendly approach, violence prevention, order enforcement to prevent fights and brawls on the buses and in public spaces, a bias towards female drivers and conductors, pre-recorded and approved audiovisual messaging and music to be played on the bus. This can form part of the resocialization strategy, behavior change modification for the youth, which is so important. All units would be outfitted with electronic access, swipe cards, as this is primarily a safer measure to track the movement of students and to aid the police in investigations in relation to any missing students or road accidents. The student transport pass, a swipe card that will have all pertinent information on a student: name, date of birth, school, home address, and parents or guardians' information. If the school bus requires pay by fare, the said card could be used to pay. Student transport pass could be topped up at each school or online, and all buses should be outfitted with tracking device and cameras on the inside and exterior of the vehicles. The bus should also be available to teachers who could serve as an additional layer of supervision, a protocol developed specifically in consultation with the Jamaica Teachers Association. The rural school bus system will reduce absenteeism and lateness and contribute to reduced truancy. consultations with the National Secondary Student Council and all other stakeholders. So I close on that good note because I believe that that is a critical part and probably the most important part of the vision that I have for transport, and it is doable. It has been done in other jurisdictions, including Caribbean nation countries, and it is just for us to come up with the will to implement. And that I have, and I know that my government has, so the support is there. You would have known already that my boards, some of them have been announced, and the balance of them will be announced after Monday when the balance go to cabinet. And I will be going to Parliament before the recess or just after the recess with a 100-day plan for the transportation sector. I meet with the transport stakeholders next week in Ocho Rios for an all-day retreat so that I can get to fully understand their concerns and obviously the partnership going forward in relation to how we are going to turn around the transport industry, the public transportation sector to become what it should be and show that we can do it and we can be a disciplined society. Thank you very much, and I look forward to other interactions in relation to my new portfolio and, of course, the existing portfolio responsibilities. And I stay and stand committed to make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Vaz. I am a mere conduit. We'll now accept questions from members of the media.
Don't all put up your hand at once.
Morning, Minister Vaz. Hal Shane Burke again, Radio Jamaica. Minister, the infrastructure for electric vehicles, concerns have been raised about the outlay for that. What is the plan to ensure that the infrastructure in place so that there are no issues? And another question, what is the financial outlay for the maintenance of the free Wi-Fi spots that are being established across the country?
So in relation to the first one, the EV infrastructure, you would see a comprehensive rollout by private sector companies, some of whom are in the fuel business and have diversified, and some who have gone into it specifically as a business. You would see JPS has been partnering with a number of gas stations, and so far I'm actually quite impressed at the amount of EV charging stations that are available around the island, especially with the fact that the EV vehicles are not as available and affordable as they will become over time as the manufacturers ramp up. And of course, the issue that we had in Jamaica, why we had to have a EV framework passed some months ago and Cabinet approved the EV policy just last week, Monday, is because the manufacturers will not have discussions with their representatives, our dealers in Jamaica, without a government policy. So now that we have a government policy fully approved and implemented, you will see the dealers in due course start to offer a wide range of electric vehicles. However, the point you made earlier is the fact that we need to have the infrastructure in place, and I'm very happy in relation to the amount of EV and the diversity of players who are going into that business and diversifying from fuel into that business as well. I don't think that there's pretty much any township, major township that you can go through now that you don't have one or two EV stations at the gas stations themselves, and others will be standalone. So yes, so I think that our timing is good. In relation to the rollout of the Wi-Fi, the first set of 189 Wi-Fi was close to $1 billion, if I'm not mistaken. And as you heard me say a while ago, the 63 that are being done now is in excess of 100 million. And the fifth round, which is another 63. So I would say to you that we would have surpassed $1 billion in the infrastructure. For payment of the infrastructure to vendors who were successful in the request for proposals. Significant funds have been things, but it's value for money. I seen all these new faces when I was here in this capacity.
You bring out the...
They were older. Glad to see the youth.
Zara Burton, 18
Oh,
degrees
Zara.
north. Yes.
Okay, put a name to a face. Okay, good.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions. Last year, late, you went to Israel, and we didn't get a briefing from you about what exactly took place in Israel, and especially as far as national security issues are concerned. Can you give us a rundown of what specifically was discussed with your Israeli counterparts on national security? That's one question, and then I do have a different question, which is in a different sector.
Let me answer one at a time. So my trip wasn't to do with national security, because obviously the Minister of National Security would deal with that. The cyber security, Jamaica, JASERT, which falls under my ministry, we went on a fact-finding mission, because obviously we have to strengthen our cyber security infrastructure. And obviously we are doing that with several countries. That was a trip to actually see what they have done over there and how that could help us. It was very cordial. There's been nothing that has come out of it in terms of any MOUs or anything to this point, but there was a willingness to share information and to show us their roadmap, which is what they did in the few days that I was there. And also the other aspect of the trip was in relation to solar, which again, we were able to see actual solar plants over there, which was very, very, very telling and interesting. But nothing to say that there's any funding or any agreements or anything that have come out over that.
All right, just on a follow-up to that, the Pegasus software, was it discussed as potentially
What's that?
Pegasus software?
No.
Was it being discussed
No.
at the time?
No,
Okay,
no.
all right. So the second question, different sector now, right, is on the issue of energy. So under the Trump administration, there were several meetings with our government regarding one of the topics, I think, was Venezuela at the time. The U.S. obviously has sanctions against Venezuela. The question I wanted to ask is, if we gave up that arrangement, which was so beneficial for us, the Petrocaribe arrangement, do you have a sense of what we got in return from the United States? Because I noticed specifically that many of the fuel imports that have been coming into the country have been from the United States. So was there anything, any quid pro quo if we gave up this arrangement, or any promises, let's say, not even quid pro quo, from the government of the United States that said that if it is that we gave up this Petrocaribe arrangement because the U.S. was about to put on sanctions or had put on sanctions, this is what the United States would do for us in return?
So that predates me, obviously. Obviously, I wasn't the minister at the time when that happened. Nothing has come to me in relation to that. That specifically would be a foreign affairs matter, because obviously the sanctions and all of those discussions are obviously through formal discussions with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But nothing has come to me in relation to any particular deal or any particular thing in relation to the United States. The thing is very fluid, because as you see, things and times are changing in relation to the positions that were taken then as against the positions now. We just have to follow and see what comes of it. But anywhere that we can explore cheaper fuel, obviously would be beneficial to the country and the people at large, but it has to be done within a certain context, obviously, led by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Good morning, Minister. My question is, Mark Bantro, 18 degrees north as well. My question is tied to Petrojam potentially considering importing oil and fuel from Russia. So we were told by the general manager of Petrojam, Telroy Morgan, that Petrojam may not be able to refine Russian crude oil based on the grades that it has received and tested so far. So it could only import finished products from Russia, such as fuel.
But we have no...
But since the marketing companies like Total, Rubis, or Texaco may not be able to purchase these finished products since they are French and American companies, who would the Russian fuel that Petrojam is considering importing be distributed to?
So Petrojam can't consider importing Russian fuel unless obviously that is cleared at the highest level in relation to the sanctions, which are very complex. From this matter came to the fore, I mean, I have gotten several briefings, and between you and I can't make heads or tail of it, because in one sentence it's saying you can, in another sentence it's saying but you can't. So that is a strict foreign affairs policy matter that would have to guide the ministry, who would then guide Petrojam. As of right now, absolutely nothing is being done in relation to any commercial agreement until such time as there is a clearance and a clarification from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in consultation with the State Department or whoever else in Washington that they have to deal with. And right now, as it stands, nothing has come to me to move that process forward. So that's where that is.
And I suspect we have exhausted the questions. Thank you very much to Honorable Minister Vaz, as well as Minister Williams, who had attended upon the post-cabinet earlier this morning. Also want to thank members of the media, also the support staff from the Office of the Prime Minister and the various ministries, agencies and departments, as well as GIS and PBCJ. Until next week, Wednesday, 8 a.m. sharp, we're always on time for another post-cabinet press briefing. Thank you very much.
It's here, Jamaica's new Polymer banknotes. Polymer banknotes are produced from a thin, transparent and flexible plastic film. Why the transition from paper to polymer? Polymer banknotes stay cleaner, they're more difficult to counterfeit, and they last longer. Plus, special features on the notes, like those developed for the visually impaired, last for the entire lifespan of